One. Hey everybody, welcome to another streaming session with the Game Addicted Show. I'm actually really excited for a few reasons today. One, since I started doing live streams for college football, I was completely unaware that there was a specific sports category, or a sports channel, I should say. I was just putting in just chatting. I figured all the podcasts, all the people just talking. I like to talk. Just put it in the, just talking channel or just chatting channel. No, ends up there actually is a dedicated sports channel. Not that would guarantee to get any views anyways, but can't hurt. So, finally have it under the right channel. So we'll see. Maybe I'll be stopping from time to time to talk to some viewers. We'll see. And the second reason I'm excited is because this is the first time all season I've had a chance to stream on the day that the college playoff committee rankings are released. So it's basically like a live reaction almost. Just released today, so I could review them fresh, honest reaction to how these going, how they're released, and my thoughts on it. So really excited about that. So really, not like other streams where I try to prep ahead of time and no, we're just going live with it. We're gonna see what the playoff committee thinks and see how that compares to the VPI rankings and see how close they are. See if maybe the playoff committee has some things right. Maybe, more than likely, has some things wrong. So, anyways, if you're new to my channel and you're watching me on YouTube, head over to my Twitch channel. That's where we cover this live. That's my main platform. So, definitely enjoy the conversation. Let me know why you think your team's the best, and I'll convince you otherwise, or vice versa. Depends on what type of mood I'm in. And if you are on Twitch and you're watching this right now, you're thinking, well, how could I watch old rankings, see if this guy's made a crap? Well, head over to my YouTube channel. It's on the top right-hand corner as well. You can find all my archive footage. Drop it there straight after I'm done streaming here. But yeah, really, really excited about today. So let's jump right into it. So, I'm seeing here that right off the bat, at number 25, the playoff committee has put Mississippi State back into the top 25. The only 4-loss team in the top 25. Let me quickly break down why I have such an issue with that. I made the argument before that the time was, I think it was the first playoff committee rankings that were released. What was it, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, whatever it was. Mississippi State was on there, and I was very adamant and firm on stating that Mississippi State has no business whatsoever being a top 25 team. They're not even close to being a top 25 team, right? I think the highest I had them ranked was like 37, 35, So, shouldn't have been sniffing the top 25. 6-4, let me show you where 64 puts them with us. At 37. And you're thinking, okay, what other SEC teams should be in the top 25? Let me show you something else. Kentucky at 7-3 is not in the top 25. Kentucky, and again, take this from a guy who cannot stand the SEC. Kentucky is more deserving to be in the top 25 than Mississippi State. Here's another team for you. Arkansas. Arkansas at 7-3 is more deserving and being in the top 25 than Mississippi State. What is it about Mississippi State that these teams love? We'll look through it. You love NC State. NC State is a good team. Great win there. Louisiana Tech, bad. Not a good team. They lost to Memphis. Memphis is 500. Not a great loss. Lost to LSU. Losing record, right? Now, you have a mixed bag here because you actually have a really good win over Texas A&M. You lost to Alabama, a game you're supposed to lose to. You beat up on Vanderbilt. You did beat Kentucky, but then you lose to Arkansas, and then you beat Auburn. You have a very mixed bag schedule, but are you telling me that a 6-4 SEC team is better than two other teams in their own conference that have, let's see, compare them to Arkansas strength schedule, 40. How am I gonna dissect this? I didn't think about it. Get this live reaction. I should probably. how do I dissect that Mississippi State shouldn't be ranked? Because honestly, what I'm seeing here, according to my stats, it really comes down to they have too many losses to be considered a top 25 team. I could see how the committee would be looking heavily at the strength of schedule. Strength of production, not something they look at, because that's something I made up here. The quality of their wins is very good, but the quality of their losses is solid, or not good. And I think they just have too many losses to be considered, the top 25 team, especially when you have Kentucky. 7-3 Kentucky. And that's debatable. I could see that. But Arkansas is so good. And Arkansas, also beat Texas A&M. And they beat, Mississippi State themselves. And LSU. All the teams that beat Mississippi State, Arkansas beat. And their losses are the only team that Arkansas seems to have lost to that Mississippi State beat was Auburn, because Ole Miss and Georgia, they beat. Not Ole Miss. They didn't play Georgia. Neither of those teams. You can't. I know there's big emphasis on strength of schedule. I could see against Kentucky, but there's really no argument against Arkansas. And Arkansas should be on the cusp of being top 25 team. They're more deserving. And that Auburn, the fact that Auburn keeps being ranked, and I keep saying Auburn is not a top 25 team, Auburn is less deserving than Mississippi State to be in top 25 team. And obviously that's proven now because they beat Mississippi State. But, I came in kind of hot that day, and I look at the numbers, I'm like, ooh, maybe I came in too hot. Too in fuego. But I still stand by what I say. Mississippi State, I just compared to other SEC schools, you could make an argument over Kentucky, but you can't make it over Arkansas. And it just doesn't make sense to put a 4-loss. Why would a 4-loss team be in there when there's so many small schools that they should be ahead of them? That's one big complaint I have with the committee. They're missing out on so many small schools. Anyways, going at number 25 with the VPI rankings is SMU. SMU was kicked out of the top 25, but they're 8-2, and those losses have to add up. If you do this channel, one measurement that I use is I look at the quality of wins per game, right? So this number here. The higher the number, the better quality wins, right? So Mississippi was a 5. We're saying SMU is at 3.5. And here's why. The value of the SMU wins are, like 2/3 of that of Mississippi State, essentially. Because SMU, they play in a weaker conference, right? Strength schedule, number 11 strength schedule Mississippi State versus number 123 with SMU. Strength production, same thing. Strength production is way, way, way lower with SMU. But again, guys, wins have to mean something. And you have to ask yourself, is 8 wins of SMU in a weaker conference as valuable or more valuable than Mississippi State with their 6 wins? And what we're saying is that SMU's wins are worth 2/3 that of Mississippi State. So because they have more wins, that is why we are ranking Mississippi State lower than SMU. And that's why we're putting SMU in our top 25. Barely in the top 25. Hot take there. Controversial. Off to a good start there, right? Again, we respect the small schools here at the Game Addicted Show. Moving on to number 24 with our VPI rankings, Utah State. Are they ranked in the playoff committee? Heck, no, they're not. But you know who wasn't ranked, is Houston, which we'll get into a little bit later. But Utah State, they've been rallying. They had a bit of a bump in the road, middle of the season, right? They lost to Boise State, who started to rally. Lost to BYU, who I've been rooting for. Not big on the Cougs, but Definitely would like a playoff buster team to jump in there one year with one of these small schools. But yeah, strength schedule not that much better than SMU. They play in different conferences. Obviously, Utah State plays Mountain West. SMU plays in the American Athletic Conference. I almost say the Conference USA, but these conferences names get a little confusing at times. Strength production also not great, but these wins matter. And similar story to SMU. I mean, a lot of these big name schools, you're gonna see the small name schools. It'll be pretty common where you see their VPI per game in the threes, basically saying that their wins are worth 2/3 of a bigger school that plays in a tougher conference. And Utah State getting to 8-2, just enough to get into our top 25 there. Really deserving. Got to respect the small schools. You can't just kick them all out just because, I don't know what the playoff committee's thinking. They're starting to get better, but yeah, that first ranking, no bueno when they released that. Next, go with Utah. Ugh, all right, you guys love me trashing the SEC. Well, now I got to trash the conference that I love, and that's with the Pac-12. The Pac-12, even though I'm a homer, even though I'm a UCLA fan, has been a mess, a disaster this season. Utah, yes, they are the second best team in the Pac-12. I don't even think it's debatable, right? The thing is, I have them ranked at number 32. Now, do I think with a game against Oregon, if they were to pull that, do they deserve to be a top 25? Heck yeah, absolutely. I think they'll jump right in there, right? And then they have one more game against, let's look it up here, Colorado. And that might even hurt them, feeding them, because Colorado's a really bad school this year. But nonetheless, Utah, even though they just got into the top 25, right now they're number 23 in the playoff committee polls. I'm saying that the Pac-12 is too weak, and there's just not enough room in the schedule. Well, we'll get into the Pac-12's playoff hopes a little bit later, but we'll see. For now, Pac-12 is really weak. Utah, we'll see what happens next week. Right now, I wholeheartedly do not believe that there should be a top 25 team. I understand why the committee wants to do that. I'm glad they respect the West Coast, but not any other year. I would say they're deserving. Not this year for the Pac-12. I mean, look, even straight schedule's mediocre. Straight production is not good. And just wait until you hear what I'd say about Oregon. But that's our views on Utah. Now, who I have at number 23 with the VPI polls, which might surprise some people because this team continues to move up. I know they have a great quarterback who I keep forgetting to look up before I do these rankings. Now, Pittsburgh is number 18 in the playoff committee polls. I have them here at number 23. I'm saying they should be ranked lower. Here's why. Now, we were looking at, you might be going crazy, like my whole take on the Mississippi State and these two small schools with SMU and Utah State. But look at Pittsburgh, right? Plays in a Power 5 conference, but the ACC is very weak this year. Not as weak as the Pac-12, unfortunately, but they are weak. Pittsburgh's strength schedule 116th. Worse. Let's say that one more time. Worse than Utah State. But their strength production, slightly better than those two schools, right? They've been having a great season. It was important for them to get that Clemson win because that has proven to be their biggest win in the season. Their second biggest win in the season, Tennessee has been their second biggest win, the 500 Tennessee. So as you can see, really capitalizing on the weak schedule. But, here's something to look at. Pittsburgh has the number 2 offense in the nation, so really a dangerous team to play. It just really hasn't been challenged, right? Clemson was their biggest challenge, and I don't know how things are going to play out in their ACC division. So we'll see. We'll see what they have left in the tank, but I'm saying for now that Pittsburgh is overrated. Speaking of overrated, yeah, SEC. I know I make this rant every week. There is no reason why the SEC, for the most part, not in all cases, but for the majority of their teams, they're ranked the highest for the respective record, right? So in this case, Texas A&M 7-3, is ranked at number 16. I'm saying, and Wisconsin. Oh, that actually the committee actually got that right. Wisconsin should be ranked ahead against Texas A&M, but just ranked a little too high. A little too high for my taste. And there's a few schools, smaller schools, that I think should be more respected. But a lot to like about Texas A&M. Strength schedule, very, very tough. Number 15. Strength production, number 9. Quality of their wins, 4.8. That's a good score, right? Even Mississippi State had a higher score there. But, 3 losses. Not bad losses at all. Like I said, Arkansas is a really good school. Mississippi State is overrated, but not a bad school by any means. And then, of course, the big loss they had to Ole Miss. That, is really what's gonna cause them to drop in playoff committee polls. So, Texas A&M, SEC generally overrated, but still deserving to be a top 25 team. Wisconsin, just a hair better than Texas A&M in these rankings. This is what's interesting about Wisconsin. Wisconsin has a killer strength schedule, number 4 in the nation, right? It has not been a gimme for Wisconsin at all. Strength production, number 37. They are playing some tough offensive defenses. Barring that, they are still ranking at number 1 in total defense. That is insane to have that tough a schedule and to be rallying the way they are. I mean, I kept on saying early in the season when they were 1-3, I'm like, listen, their strength schedule is way too tough. Wisconsin better than you think. And oh boy, even they're surprising me. I mean, I knew they're going to start rallying some wins. I would have never guessed to go 6 straight. I thought that maybe that Iowa game, because Iowa also has a really good defense, might have given them trouble. But Iowa's offense is way worse. So, yeah, maybe I should have saw that come. But still, Wisconsin should be ranked against Texas A&M. Glad the playoff committee got that right. Again, maybe a little overrated. And that could be debatable because we're going to jump to a few teams, 4 or 5 teams straight that you guys will probably not agree with. But starting with Appalachian State. Now, Appalachian State always kind of sneaks in here every year. It took them a little bit longer to climb up because they do play in a weaker conference. But check this out. Appalachian State has a tougher strength of schedule playing in the Sun Belt Conference than Texas A&M. Or not, I'm sorry. Oh, let me repeat that. Then Pittsburgh. Sorry, Texas A&M, I just finished it and had a really tough strength schedule. But yeah, Pittsburgh. And you would think of how would the Sun Belt Conference have a team with a tougher strength schedule than a Power 5 school? Well, you have to look at a few teams that they faced off against, right? We had Coastal Carolina, which was in the top 25 in the AP polls for the majority of the season until they recently dropped off. They played against Louisiana, unfortunately, a tough loss there. They did play a Power 5 school with Miami, but remember, when you're calculating strength of schedule, you're looking at your opponents and your opponent's record. Same thing with production. You're looking at your opponent's total offense defense and your opponent's total offensive defense. So it's still not great. It's the wrong side of the middle of the road with Appalachian State, but still solid at 8-2. If you're looking at some of the schools that are top 25 that we're going to cover, Appalachian State definitely deserves to be ranked, and I don't know if the committee is going to give them that, but for now, they're ranked here in the VPI formula at number 20. Baylor. Now, this is going to be an interesting one because you would think that Baylor beating a top 10 team, top 5 team, I think, right? Depends on the AP polls versus the committee polls. The committee polls had Oklahoma at number 8. I think I had Oklahoma as high as number 3 or 5. I can't remember what I had them at last week. But yeah, Baylor does move up in our rankings about 4 spots. But what we're saying is that even though that was a massive, massive win for Baylor, Baylor's strength of schedule overall is still middle of the road, and along with their strength of production. So even though it was a huge boost for them to play against Oklahoma, that loss to TCU hurts them. Oklahoma State lost, not so much. But if you look at the rest of their schedule, look at the final VPI score for all these teams, all the negatives, right? So they beat up Tech State, really bad school. Division II school. Kansas, really bad. Solid win over Iowa State, who might have been a little overrated when they played them. right? West Virginia is bad. BYU was a great win for them, but again, Texas has proven to be bad. I thought Texas was a lot better than they showed it to be. And but yeah, mediocre strength of schedule, and that's why even though they are deserving to be a top 25 team, ranked a little too high. I will say I'm glad that the committee didn't raise them as far as they dropped Oklahoma, because it's tight in the top 10, and we'll see there. But I think the committee approached it the right way. I just think they're about 8 spots too high. So feel free to disagree there, but that's my take on Baylor. Do they have enough in the Big 12 to get into the playoff? I don't think so. I think that Oklahoma's the best shot. And even then, I had my issues with Oklahoma. So I think that's it. I think Baylor plays spoiler. I just don't think that even with winning, even if Oklahoma were to rally and win their conference title and everything, I just had too crowded in the top. And same thing with Baylor. With 2 losses, this mediocre strength schedule, just not enough there to really play out for a playoff run. We'll get my thoughts on that later. A little complicated. BYU. Now, BYU is finally being respected again. No movement in the college football playoff committee. They're number 14 there, number 18 here. So, surprisingly, even though I root for the small schools, we're saying Baylor is a little overrated. Now, Baylor, I keep mentioning every week BYU. I keep saying Baylor. Now, BYU is a little overrated. Now, BYU is an interesting case because they had everything to qualify for a playoff spot. I really honestly believe that. Even, playing smaller schools with like Boise State, who they lost to, still a good school, right? Baylor, who we just finished talking about, still top 25 school. They still have to play USC. They had everything going for them to deserve a playoff spot, but wasn't meant to be. Still putting together a great season. Their strength of production solid. In the 50s range. Total offense is really good. Total defense could use some help, but yeah, a nice resume for the Cougars. Really curious where they'll end up. Maybe still an at-large bid. I mean, I don't think it's crazy. Of all the small schools, I mean, there's some more deserving ones, I think, but for now, I would definitely love to see the Cougs in the New Year's Six Bowl. So I really hope it happens for them. Moving on to Louisiana, another school that is not ranked in the top 25 in the playoff polls. I could see why if you're going to discount them, just like you were Appalachian State for playing in the Sun Belt. But remember, they are 9-1. Their only loss being to Texas, and that wasn't even a blowout by Texas. I mean, they gave Texas a good run for the money. I get that their strength of schedule is really bad, 126. I get that their strength production is really bad. But again, look at this. VPI, 3.73. Almost somewhere between 3/5 and 4/5. More like 7/10 of of what a bigger school would be pulling per win. But they do have 9 wins, and the only loss was against a Power 5 school. Texas, I for a long time felt was better than they had listed in the record. After that loss to Kansas, who knows with Texas? But considering that their only loss against one Power 5 school, I'm sure if they had some more matchups, I'm sure they might be able to pull out a few of them. Good win over Appalachian State. But yeah, those wins have value. So the more they win, you got to ask yourself how many wins from a Sunbelt school is worth of that of a Power 5 school. And that's what we're saying with Louisiana, that their 9 wins are good enough to be ranked at number 17. And I understand that. There's a big difference between a 9-1 Louisiana versus a 9-1 of some of the other schools we're going to cover. So just keep that in mind when we're looking at this. Another 9-1 school did sneak into top 25. Pretty underrated, actually. Strength schedule, really bad as well. And you'll see a trend here with these. Same thing, strength production. Lost to Texas Tech, but rallied 9 straight. And again, their biggest win being SMU. That should mean something with Houston. So they play in the American Athletic Conference. always an underrated conference, but always putting up some tough competition there. And yeah, Houston should be a top 25 team. What differentiates these two, even though that the strength production is lower for Houston, is, well, it's a mixed bag. Strength schedule is lower, but strength production is a little bit better. And the quality of wins is lower, but ultimately the loss that Louisiana had is worse than the loss that that Houston had against Texas Tech. Texas Tech being the better school. So that's what differentiates those two schools. And that should be it, with the exception of two more of small schools that we'll cover down the road. If you think it's two small schools ranked higher than that, yeah, boys and girls, and we'll jump into why. Iowa. Iowa is always an interesting case because Iowa finally is moving up in the polls. They moved up to, that was a really great win they had against Minnesota. Moved to number 17. Just about right. I had them number 15, so not too much of a difference in thought process there. And again, when I say that, understand that this is all calculated. There is no personal bias when putting in these numbers and just raw data. And I'm just kind of reviewing what the data spewing out. But yeah, these rankings that I'm producing are strictly data driven. No input from me whatsoever. So looking at the numbers, Iowa was a bit underrated. We're still saying a little bit underrated, but not as much as they were when the first playoff committees came out. Big win over Minnesota. Really tough strength schedule, number 36, 39 strength production. Again, really interesting makeup to have the number 12 defense, a really, really strong defense, and 124th offense. Like, they could stop you, but you could stop them pretty easily too. So really interesting that with that sort of resume that they're able to win as many games as they are. So go on, Hawkeyes. Keep it going. Big Ten. Great conference. Back with the SEC, Ole Miss picking up a huge victory over Texas A&M. Now, Ole Miss is, again, a little overrated. Top 10 team in the SEC. I don't understand it. We'll jump into why. But even though that was a great win, what's special about Ole Miss isn't their strength of schedule, it's their strength production. The strength of schedule is mediocre, but the offenses and defenses is number 4. They're playing some of the best offensive defense in the nation, and they're doing that still having the number 3 total offense. Defense, really bad, number 99, but number 3 offense in the nation. So, it looks like they'll go blows with anybody. Can they stop you? Doesn't look like it. So that's a really interesting resume with Ole Miss. But it's, even though I don't like Lane Kiffin, very, very, very impressive for them to have that sort of offense against that combination of offensive defenses. I mean, they're playing top-notch programs. Oregon. Here we go. They actually dropped. They were ranked number 12. They've last week in our VFA forums dropped number 13 again. This is what hurts them, guys. Just like you're rewarded for having big wins over big games and when you beat really weak opponents like you did Washington State. And again, this is what's going to hurt Oregon because they play in the Pac-12. The Pac-12 being as weak as they are, it keeps dropping their score, and their strength of schedule for Oregon is 113th. So what I like to point out is whether you agree or disagree on the Pac-12, whether you agree or disagree whether Oregon should be a top 5 school, that's all debatable. But the question I always pose, out of any school with the one loss, and this even includes some of the small schools, who has a worse loss than Oregon losing against a 3-7 Stanford? And that loss looks worse and worse every week. It wasn't so bad when they initially lost to them, but that loss continues to look worse and worse. So with that loss and having that weak strength of schedule and strength production and playing the Pac-12 and everything, again, I'm a homer for UCLA. I'm a homer for the Pac-12. Can you justify Oregon being ranked as high as they are as a playoff team? I am super curious to see if the committees are going to hold strong by that, because Oregon's still sitting at number 3. I don't know. Absolutely wild. But not much more to say on that. Best chance is having a good win over Utah. That could really change things for Oregon. Then we'll see how that changes in the rankings here. I still don't think they'll get in close top 5. Maybe they'll break top 10 though. If they beat Utah next week when it comes to the VPI formula. I don't think that's going to move them at all in the playoff committee polls because, they're going up against Alabama. And what are you going to do? You can't do anything against Alabama because everybody loves them. Moving on to number 12. Oh boy, here we go. San Diego State. Yes, I said it. I am saying San Diego State deserves to be not only ranked higher than Oregon, but a top 12 team. I get that they play in the Mountain West. I get that the strength schedule is absolute garbage. 117 strength production a little bit better, but still bad. But I'm gonna keep saying until you guys got turned blue in the face. Victories have value, and even though the value of San Diego State's victories is lower than even Oregon, they add up, and the loss that San Diego State had, which was against Fresno State, I think we'd all agree that Fresno State, even though playing the smallest conference as well in the Mountain West, is a better team than Stanford. So having the same win-loss, having a better strength of schedule, having a better strength of production, and having a less, not as bad loss, San Diego State has the resume to compete with Oregon and should be ranked higher. I wonder how much of this will come true when it comes to the bowl games to prove which teams are deserving and not deserving to be where they're at. I am really curious how the playoff committee is going to treat those, but still a few weeks before we start having that conversation. But San Diego State, yes, very underrated at 9-1, and with the playoff committees, they barely had them at number 19. We're saying they're should be 7 spots higher. Crazy, I know. But hey, if you had BYU on the run, if you're respecting Coastal Carolina early in the season, hell, if you have Cincinnati still in the playoff conversation, you should have San Diego State and as a higher ranked team. Not in the playoff conversation, but a higher ranked team. Oklahoma, they actually dropped 8 spots. We had them at number 3 last week. You might be wondering why there's such a huge discrepancy between how high the committee had them versus us having higher, surprisingly, even though Oklahoma's had struggles, and then how they were treated when they dropped. Oklahoma has a terrible strength schedule. Even though the Big 12 is the 3rd best conference, not bad at all. Having 110th strength of schedule because you schedule Tulane, because you play a Division 1-2 school. The rest of the schedule does not help them at all. Nebraska struggling, West Virginia losing record, Texas is falling apart, TCU not good, Kansas a terrible team which somehow beat Texas. Your only notable wins are with Baylor. Baylor you lost to. So the only big team you've played is Baylor, and you lost that game. The second biggest was Kansas State, who is not a bad team, but also when it comes to talent, Kansas State is big on their JUCO transfer. Well, at least they were with Coach Snyder, but they're big on their JUCO transfers. At least I don't know if that's still the case there. And yeah, I mean that's your biggest win. Kansas State, a 7-3, not a bad, but not deserving top 25's Kansas State team. So they finally got punched in the mouth, and I knew it was coming. And yeah, Oklahoma, number 11, playoff committee dropped them a lot, and I think they made the right call by being pretty harsh to Oklahoma because they shouldn't be as high as they were there. Oklahoma dropped to number 13, so we're actually saying Oklahoma should even be better with the playoff committee ranks them, but I think it was the right treatment. Now, top 10. There's going to be very little movement in the top 10 because it's so crowded and it's so tight, especially with the next 4 schools I'm going to cover. We're talking about less than a fraction of a percent difference between these 4 schools. So let's see how close they are. Michigan State is number 7, the playoff committee. I have them at number 10. A lot to like about Michigan State, but here's what I don't like. Weak strength of schedule. Even though the Big Ten Conference is a very strong conference. They're usually a top conference. Most years I've done this, but yeah, the number two. Still, nothing wrong with Silver. Number two conference this season. But the lineup of games they've had just has not been great. When you look at their non-conference, I mean, yeah, Western Kentucky, 6-4, not a terrible, small school to play. But a lot of teams you line on your schedule, with the exception of Michigan, which was a huge win for you, hasn't been great. I mean, the only school within winning record outside of Michigan, I think, has been Purdue, which they lost that game. So yeah, Michigan State doesn't really be a top 10. It's debatable if you think they should be number 7, but I would say that they're just a tad overrated. Not much, just a smidge. Speaking of controversies, okay, let me show you the beauty. I absolutely love this about my VPI rankings, because this is so great. Could you tell me why Alabama is ranked number 2? We talk about some of the strength schedules and wins and losses, some of this at school. Look at this. Strength of schedule for Oklahoma, playing in the mighty SEC, the number 1 team, number 1 conference, in the nation, right, with the number 1 team in it. Oh, Alabama still sits at 102nd in strength of schedule, right? Look at who they played. New Mexico, a Division II school, their biggest non-conference, then Southern Mississippi, right? Their biggest game was a 5-5 Miami team. So that's your non-conference schedule. Screw this BS with the SEC playing only 8 games, along with the ACC, because that distributes less loss within conference. So when we say they're the best conference, that's also debatable, because it's skewed. Because all the other conferences that are Power 5 play 9 games, and even a lot of the smaller conferences against interconference play, and the SEC still pulls this crap, right? And even though a lot of times they'll schedule 1 big game, they still schedule 3 garbage games, not alone playing a super week of non-conference play late in the season. Utter garbage that they do that, because what they do is they establish a high ranking early in the season, and then it's like an essential bye week, because you win that. Where if they were in reverse, like all the other big schools where they play all their non-conference games up front, if you play against weak opponents, you're not rewarded for them. But what they do is they get rewarded early, because they're in the SEC, the mighty SEC. They move up in the rankings because it's so tough to play against each other. And then you schedule these weak non-conference opponents late in the season, get that bye week, but it doesn't hurt you like it would early in the season. It's so dirty. And Alabama has no reason whatsoever to be a top two school, just because people want to kiss the ring, because it's Nick Saban, because the high recruiting classes, all that. But it shouldn't matter. I hate that every time. Let me tell you something I freaking cannot stand, is when I always see this on ESPN and a bunch of, but specifically ESPN, it's like, oh, it's the committee's role to find the best 4 teams. I'm like, no, it's fucking not. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry to cuss there. It's the 4 most deserving teams. There's a difference between being the 4 best teams and the 4 most deserving teams, because you might think that the 4 most deserving teams are the 4 best teams, but if you were a better team, because let's say you had better coaching, better facilities, better players, all of that, if you slip up on the field, if you lay an egg and you lose, that doesn't get dismissed because you're a better team. Just because you're better than on talent, and we'll jump into now. I was going to surprise everybody with the University of Texas San Antonio being ranked higher than Alabama on here, but yeah, if Alabama play UTSA, they would smoke them. But does that mean that they're more deserving than UTSA? Does that mean that they're more deserving than Cincinnati? No, I mean those teams are producing. And Alabama is playing this garbage strength of schedule. You lost to a good Texas A&M school, but you does not deserve. There's nothing on your resume to say you deserve to be the number 2 school in the nation. I'm sorry. So this whole crap that they keep selling, that's about picking 4 best schools. No, who earned it? It doesn't matter how good you are. Who earned it? So you got to stop that. The 4 most deserving isn't the 4 best. It leads to it a lot of times, but not always the case. You don't get rewarded just for just because you got a a high report card, but you fail your test. You know what I mean? Like that is, I don't know. I got to think of a better analogy, but hopefully I convey that in some manner. Frustrates me. Frustrates me with the SEC in Oklahoma. Or the SEC in Alabama. I mean, Oklahoma too, but Alabama. Because, don't even get me started on the whole Oklahoma Texas moving to the SEC. All right. We're done. We're done with Oklahoma. They're super overrated. I'm tired of this BS. The big reason why I even created the stupid database and all that is to prove how overrated the SEC is most years, even though this year I'm proving that the SEC is the best conference. Even though they're best conference, Alabama's not amongst them because the way their schedule line. Last note on this whole 8 fucking conference. Sorry to cuss, but this whole 8 freaking conference thing schedule is that just because you play in the best conference doesn't mean those teams all play each other. You're not even playing half. You know what you're playing? You are playing half, but that the roll of the dice. It just so happened that the toughest teams that Alabama has faced is Ole Miss and Texas A&M. They are not playing against Georgia. They are, they missed on a few other schools with what was it, Kentucky and Arkansas. So no, you just played Texas A&M and Ole Miss. You scheduled too much of a garbage non-conference schedule to deserve to be number 2. I'm sorry, 4 games that are absolute garbage. Get out of here with that, fucking Alabama's. Okay, enough of that. Oklahoma State. Here's a good comparison. Why is Oklahoma State not ranked number 2 in the nation if you're saying Alabama is? When Oklahoma State, even though play a weak strength of schedule, strength production, way better than Alabama, right? No, it's not. I'm sorry, Alabama has a way better strength production. I better shut the freak up. Still, strength schedule, absolute garbage, Alabama. Oklahoma State, more balanced, better strength schedule, weaker the strength production, but the same record. And what separates out Oklahoma State and Alabama is a fraction of a percent, right? We have Alabama at 35.62, Oklahoma State at 35.7. So we're talking about 0.08 difference. But the difference being that the strength schedule is just slightly higher. And the best win that Oklahoma State has is against Baylor. And the second best would be against Boise State, surprisingly. And followed by Kansas State. So we're talking about 3 games that combined would be better than what Alabama has, because even Baylor we have ranked higher than Texas A&M in these rankings. So something to think about there. But Ole Miss, you know what? Forget about that analogy. Well, anyways, I don't know what I said there, but still, Oklahoma State's more deserving to be a higher ranked team. Here we go. Wake Forest, they did lose, but they bounced back with a really good win over NC State. NC State finally broke into our top 25 VPI rankings last week, but they booted them right out again. They dropped 4 spots in the playoff committee polls, but they should be out altogether. Now, Wake Forest is being respected. It took them a while. The playoff committee has number 10. We have number 7. Remember, it's a fraction percent that separates Michigan State all the way up to Wake Forest here. So you could really put these teams in any order. Even though I just finished ripping Alabama, those 4 schools, I mean, very similar, both all 9-1. Variation strength schedule and strength production, right? Some have like lower strength schedules but higher strength productions. Ultimately, Wake Forest comes out on top just as by smidge. They do, even though they play in the ACC, and that is a weak conference. Their VPI per game is good. Their one loss to North Carolina isn't the best, but North Carolina is one of the best 500 schools out there. So take that as you will. But yeah, Wake Forest, even them, they would say more determined than Alabama. All right, this is where we're going to piss some people off. University of Texas San Antonio. Why, after all that, would I ever have the team with the second to last worst strength of schedule and the 7th to last were strength production as a top 6 school, ranked ahead of Alabama, ranked ahead of Oklahoma State, Wake Forest. Are you crazy? Look at that VPI, absolute garbage at 3.75. Well, again, it's close. I think any of these schools would be able to leapfrog UTSA, but what we're saying is that wins have value, even though these wins are worth, 3/4, essentially, of those 4 schools we just mentioned. They do have that one additional win, and that one win is just a smidge better than those 4 schools, what we're saying. Those wins add up. Now, am I saying if UTSA would face off any of these schools, would they beat them? No. Look, straight no. Even though these numbers are inflated, you're like, wow, top 25 defense offense. They face against a really weak strength production. But what we are saying is that going back to the whole argument is not whether it's the best school is the most deserving. I argue it's the most deserving because even though it's a weaker strength schedule, weak strength production, those wins have to have value. And even though they're worth 4/5 of the big schools, they're still worth something and they still be rewarded. Are we saying UTSA deserves to be in the playoffs? No, but we are saying that they should be way more highly respected than they are. The fact that they're not even a top 25 school is absolutely bonkers to me. So, no, they are number 22. So, yeah. They're finally respected. We're almost done here, guys. Number 5 in the nation with Ohio State. Ohio State. The only thing that haunts them is that loss to Oregon. Even though I'm a Pac-12 homer, Big 12 is going to be fine. They're going to get somebody in. Strength production, number 33. Strength of schedule, number 50. So solid overall. They racked 8 straight wins. Really good win over Purdue. Number 1 offense in the nation. So a lot to like about Ohio State. Slight difference in how the playoffs have them. We have them. Interesting because obviously I don't have Oregon in the top 4, but I might have somebody else, which we'll jump into in a second. Cincinnati finally started to match up pretty close to where the playoff has them. Looks like they are still stuck at number 5, and so it looks like we're just swapping Ohio State for Cincinnati. Again, we were the argument when I bring up like UTSA earlier. It's always kind of hard to compare them to the 4 schools I mentioned with Wake Forest, Michigan State, Oklahoma State, and Alabama. It's a better comparison when I compare them to Cincinnati because look at Cincinnati. The argument I try to make is that if you consider Cincinnati a top 4 or 5 school, right, with this absolute garbage strength of schedule, 125, 121 strength production, right? Even their VPI is less than 4% per game. I mean, it's so bad. But you're saying that they're a playoff contender team, right? And you have UTSA, who plays in a bad conference as well, Conference USA, has only a slightly worse strength of schedule, and in fact, only 2 spots lower in strength of production than Cincinnati. You're saying that this undefeated team doesn't have the resume to be a top 10 team, but Cincinnati does? And you're saying Cincinnati deserves to be ranked ahead of all the schools, with the exception they have Alabama ranked higher in the playoff committee polls. But that's more the argument I try to make. It's not so much that I think UTSA can match up with any of those schools. Maybe Wake Forest, but because Wake Forest has a really weak strength schedule. But do you think UTSA could match up against like Alabama? No, they most likely get just absolutely demolished. Who knows? You could always pull the upset. But yeah, 9 out of 10 times, I think UTSA would just get demolished in that game. But if we're saying who's most deserving, you're willing to say that Cincinnati is deserving to be a playoff team. You have to say the same against University of Texas San Antonio. The logic has to apply the same. You have a very similar resume, even though they played in 2 separate. They both, American conferences. One's the USA Conference USA, one's the American Athletic Conference. But still, aside from playing different conferences, extremely similar resumes. Top 25 in total offense and total defense, right? Cincinnati was actually having a worse offense, and a better defense. So, but combining these two, you would technically have a better resume on what they're able to produce on the field than Cincinnati. So again, what is the logic of saying Cincinnati, who I agree is a playoff competent team, be so high and UTSA being so low when the resumes are so similar? I'll leave that up to you guys. You guys answer that in the comments. Let me know. Okay. That's my little rant on why UTSA. I have to justify UTSA being a top 6 school. Madness. Everyone called me a bad man. Here is your biggest surprise of the week. Michigan jumping back in to a playoff spot here. We have them at number 3. They are number 6 in the playoff polls. There is so much to like about Michigan. They had a big win against Penn State. Penn State was not an easy school to beat, right? Their worst loss is a 9-1 Michigan State team, right? Where, I mean, I think we could safely say that people would probably consider Michigan State better than Texas A&M. Most people, I mean, not all, maybe. We would definitely say that Michigan State is better than Stanford, right? We're going back to that argument between that and Oregon. We would, so if you have a 9-1 loss and you have a number 28 strength schedule in the top 30 strength production, why wouldn't Michigan be a playoff competent team? Why would Ohio State, who lost to Oregon, and we're saying that Michigan State is better than Oregon, why would, at least in the VPI rankings, why would Michigan not be a top 2-3 school? Leave it to you guys. Michigan, really impressive resume. Definitely deserve to be a playoff spot. And it will be. I mean, as long as they, take care of business, they have more than enough in their resume, once playing in the conference title game and everything. Michigan is not out of it by any means, but I find it really interesting that they're not being considered for the playoff spot yet. They're still just in the outside looking in. So, especially when they're to their conference rival with Ohio State. If UTSA wasn't a big surprise enough, here's the team I have to vouch for every week. And a team I don't even like. I really do not like Notre Dame. I cannot stand them. But Notre Dame, even though they're being respecting the polls, they've did move up one spot, mostly because the Oklahoma lost. But we are saying that, or I am saying, that Notre Dame should be the second best school in the nation. Yes, they have one loss, but their only loss is to an undefeated Cincinnati team, right? I know you're looking for that just stellar win where they have, the best one they have is Wisconsin. We've been saying Wisconsin's going to keep winning. They're going to keep rallying. You're going to see that win against Wisconsin is better than you think, right? I understand that, they faced Navy and they faced Florida State, which are not great schools, but a really balanced schedule. So the high of highs for Notre Dame may not be there, but their low of lows, because they didn't play a Division II school, isn't there either. So it's a really well-balanced schedule. Again, number 19 strength schedule. Strength production, number 7. We are saying that, or I keep saying we. I am saying that they are facing the top offenses and defenses. They need to be rewarded for that. So for them to come out with 9-1 record, hands down, more deserving, way more deserving than like Alabama being number 2. So Notre Dame, I do not like them, but goddamn, you got to respect them. Gosh dang, you got to respect them. Sorry for that. I don't mean to use Lord's name in vain. But yeah, Notre Dame should be a top 2 team. And the easiest of easy picks, I say it every week, Georgia. My goodness. The gap between Georgia and everybody else just keeps increasing. There's a pretty big gap now. The gap between Notre Dame and everybody else is increasing, but even as much as Notre Dame should be ranked ahead of everybody else, Georgia's gap is even more. It's insane how good Georgia is. I mean, they could spare to lose 1 or 2 games. They would still be number 1, according to this resume. Top 25 strength schedule, number 15 strength production. They do play against a Division II school this weekend. I am super curious to see how it's going to affect them here in these rankings. It's not, they should blow that team out. Who are they facing? I know it's some Division II school. I'm looking it up right now. Yeah, I don't even recognize that logo. CHSO. Who is CHSO? Is that Charleston or? Yeah, Charleston Southern. So yeah, there's a point according to the power index on ESPN. There's a 99.9% chance that Georgia's gonna win that game. So yeah, Georgia. I'm curious how much it'll drop them in the VPI polls here, but yeah, it really doesn't matter. So Georgia, um, I Georgia could lose two more games, and as long as one of those isn't against the Division Two school, Charleston Southern, they should still be in the playoffs. Like it's insane. I mean, they're not going to be because the way the committee works and everything, but yeah, Georgia deserves to be in the playoffs regardless. And if you're ever going to make a case for the two SC schools, even though I'd hate that, it'd be more deserving to have two Big Ten schools, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean Georgia, that's insane, absolutely insane what they're doing. I hate the SEC, but gotta respect them. But that is it, guys. That is it for my stream. We are hitting an hour mark here. Glad to do a live reaction. Kind of came in hot. Needed to recapture my thoughts there. But overall, really happy with how this is going. We are winding down the last few weeks of college football before we head into the playoff polls. It's rivalry week for a lot of schools, and this week and next week. Big game UCLA has over USC. Really curious how that'll play out. It shocks me that the power index for ESPN has USC favored, but I also see that the spread is 3.5 in UCLA's favor, even though they're at the Coliseum. They rarely win at the Coliseum, at least in recent memory. The last time they won was, 2015 with Brett Hundley and the gang. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes. So, go Bruins. Again, guys, if you're watching this on Twitch, give me a follow on our path to affiliate with, well, I don't know if I'll apply for affiliate, but on the path to 50 followers. If you're watching on YouTube, head over to my Twitch channel. Please give me a follow there because I am looking to grow this, engage in the conversation, have some fun, and always, always bring warmth and kindness to your hearts. But I thank you guys all for watching. We'll be back next week to cover those rankings and see where these playoffs goes because I feel there's going to be some crazy movement in the last 2 weeks of the season before we get to the conference championship games. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next week. Good night, everybody.